Hi, I'm Arun George, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, we're looking at why a state's decision to merge 8,000 schools is facing protests. Then, we're looking at the latest on the development of a vaccine for COVID 19. But first, we're looking at the implications of cyber attacks that two Indian pharmaceutical firms faced recently. On the 17th of October, Indian pharmaceutical firm Dr. Reddy's had a major announcement. It reported that it had received regulatory approval from the Drugs Control General of India to conduct mid to late stage human trials for Russia's Sputnik V vaccine candidate in India. Around a week later, the firm said it had isolated its data center services after a cyber attack. A fortnight later, Mumbai based pharmaceutical firm Lupin became the second major Indian pharmaceutical company to be hit by a cyber attack. Earlier this year, the firm had launched its own version of the drug Favipiravir that is used to treat mild to moderate COVID 19 symptoms. The Indian Express's Prabha Raghavan, who has been covering the pharmaceutical sector's response to the pandemic and reported on these two cyber attacks, joins us now to talk about why these attacks are a matter of concern. We started by asking Prabha about what had happened with both companies.
The attack that Dr. Reddy's experienced is known as a ransomware attack, where basically malware is put into the system, into the company's servers, and it ends up encrypting the data files, which then means that the company can't really access its own information. And in order for them to be able to do so, they'd have to pay a ransom to the person that's hacked their system.
Hackers who use ransomware often seek payment in the form of Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency, since it is virtually untraceable. Multiple corporates and government entities have been victims of such attacks where their entire networks are taken down by hackers demanding ransom.
We don't really know specifically what has happened with Lupin. The company has vaguely said that, their IT systems have been impacted on some level. And so the guess is that it is possibly a similar ransomware attack, but we're not really sure because the company hasn't really specified what exactly the nature of the cyber attack is. Both companies have been very vocal about the fact that this has not impacted their operations per se. We know that Dr. Reddy's has launched an investigation. And similarly with Lupin, from what we understand, what the company did tell us was that the incident is being investigated thoroughly, and that there is an impact assessment of this incident that is ongoing, and that they're trying to restore the impacted systems.
Both companies have said that the impact of these attacks haven't really affected their systems or core operations. But is there any clarity on where these attacks are coming from?
It's very vague at the moment. I did hear that I think in the case of Lupin, the origin of the impact was East European, but that hasn't really been verified. And in the case of Dr. Reddy's as well, I think the company's still trying to find out what exactly the situation is, where the attack must have come from. But that's the thing with cyber attacks, they can actually come from anywhere. Some speculation has been on that some attacks, not specific to Dr. Reddy's or Lupin, but cyber attacks on pharma firms especially could also be coming from China. And that's also because pharmaceutical firms in India over the years have been gaining a stronghold in different key export markets where Chinese firms have had a good run for a while. So that could be one. I mean, it could be coming from, honestly, it could be coming from anywhere. It depends on what the motive of the attack is. If it's to steal information or if it is to just, earn a quick buck, it could honestly be coming from anywhere.
Why would a pharmaceutical company be a victim of such a cyber attack? What's the information at stake?
So, Indian pharmaceutical companies, especially during the pandemic, have been heavily involved in research and development of vaccines, as well as the supply of, on a very large scale, of drugs that are used in the treatment of COVID. So there are very high stakes at the moment for Indian pharmaceutical companies, which anyway, they form one of the largest pharmaceutical industries in the world. They have varied export markets. Indian pharmaceutical companies have a lot to lose, therefore, in a situation where their information is impacted during a cyber attack. Another thing is that over the year, we have to also remember that this issue is not something that just blew up this year. It has, of course, gained more traction during the pandemic, but Indian pharmaceutical companies had already been vulnerable to cyber attacks in the past. In fact, last year there was apparently a mention by a cybersecurity expert, Kaspersky, that said that Indian pharmaceutical firms were the sixth most vulnerable to cyber attacks in the world.
And how have the two companies dealt with these cyber attacks?
As soon as the attack occurred, both companies did isolate the IT services that were impacted as a result of the attack. And in Dr. Reddy's case, they'd shut down all of their data service centers so that they could conduct an investigation into what exactly the root cause of this issue was, where exactly the attack had occurred, and how exposed the company could have been as a result.
But why is this a matter of concern? Isn't it an industrial problem that doesn't really affect people? Prabha says it's not as simple as that anymore, thanks to the race to beat COVID-19.
Given the fact that when you hack into a system, you can pretty much do anything with the information that's there. You can either steal the information, you can lock the information and encrypt it. My understanding is you could probably even go and change some of the information that's there. If you get access to encrypted files of another company and you have that power, you could potentially put the population at risk either by preventing them from getting access to a vaccine sooner. Given the fact that the world is racing towards a COVID vaccine right now, we're all waiting on a vaccine coming out soon. Such hiccups like these could potentially either delay the launch of a vaccine. It could bring the integrity of the information that is stored in these servers. It could bring that into question. It could also potentially, we don't really know what personal data is stored, especially when trials are conducted. It's supposed to be anonymized, but we don't know how exactly that information on clinical trials is stored. So a person hacking into such systems and getting such information could possibly also get access to personalized information.
Incidentally, Dr. Reddy's has said that no personalized information was accessed when it faced the cyber attack. But as Prabha said, that's a risk that others also face with such cyber attacks. Prabha says the Indian pharmaceutical companies are facing higher risk because they've been digitizing their data more over these years. The information stored by pharmaceutical companies could be about products, the ingredients of their products, and even clinical trial data.
And especially right now, when you have a lot of Indian companies that are involved in clinical trials of COVID vaccines that could potentially be deployed over the world, it is very crucial information that is at stake, right? That a company or that an entity or a hacker could try and steal, or if it is just a ransomware attack, which is what Dr. Reddy's has said its own attack was, it could just be a malicious attempt to sort of gain a quick buck out of a company that's trying to actually make something valuable that could affect the course of history, right? So the information that's at stake from Indian pharmaceutical companies at the moment, it's very high stakes that we're seeing right now. And we have seen that during the pandemic, there has been an increase in the kinds of cyber attacks that we're seeing.
India's involvement in the development of vaccine and drugs in the treatment of COVID-19 only makes Indian pharmaceutical giants a bigger target.
One of the executives that I spoke to who belongs to a vaccine firm that has been involved in development of a COVID vaccine, this person told me that there has been a 15-fold increase in attempts at attacking that company's servers in the last 4 to 5 months alone. So we are seeing that this is becoming an issue, especially during the pandemic, and especially for firms that are potentially involved in the development of COVID-19 vaccines. But at the same time, we're also seeing companies like Lupin, which aren't involved in development of vaccines, but have, maybe either been involved launching a product like Favipiravir, which is used to treat mild to moderate COVID symptoms. We're seeing even companies like that getting attacked.
Prabha says she'd spoken with an expert who was earlier working with a large international pharmaceutical company who said that the risk to Indian companies has been growing over the years. She explains why.
While they are increasingly digitizing, they're not really able to institute or implement the kinds of safeguards that are required of them to protect their information. And so basically while the digitization is ongoing, the safety measures are not really able to catch up to the speed at which digitization is happening, which then leaves their servers vulnerable to such attacks. There's also a greater risk for such firms because they're gaining more, they're gaining a stronger or larger footprint in various markets where you see other companies from other countries being threatened as a result.
The specific attacks involving Dr. Reddy's and Lupin don't really affect either company's capacity to continue operations. No ulterior motive is being suspected given the scale of the attack and the fact that ransomware was used. But, as Prabha says, it's a problem that the Indian pharmaceutical company will need to take seriously.
If these companies are not able to protect themselves from these kinds of attacks, then we don't really know how at risk they can be to attacks where information can be stolen or where information can be manipulated. And if that occurs, then you're really putting not just your own company, but your partners at risk and the population in general at risk. So we do have to sort of look at it long term and see, okay, if there are companies that are more vulnerable to cyber attacks and they're unable to stop these attempts. Unlike this vaccine firm that I spoke to that has been, working day and night to keep hackers out of its systems and has flagged, 15-fold increase in attempts, but has so far not been attacked yet. If other companies are not able to keep such attempts at bay, then that could put the information that they're working with at a greater risk, which might then sort of it might not be a good signal for people or other companies or institutions that are looking to partner with Indian companies to produce a vaccine.
Before we get to the next segment, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say that they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there's perhaps no other place that does this better than the Indian Express's Explained section. We on Three Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of the newspaper, you know how useful the Explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log into indianexpress.com/explained and access their coverage 24/7. Explained by the Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show. Aishwarya Mohanty, who covers the state of Odisha for the Indian Express, had recently reported about protests in different parts of the state over a government scheme to merge 8,000 schools. We're now speaking with her about why parents have raised objections to a scheme that is said to be aimed at improving education in the state. We started by asking her why these schools are being merged.
So these schools which are being merged in Odisha are government-run primary and secondary schools. The reason why these schools have been identified is because these schools are low on enrollment. In all of these schools, the strength of students is less than 20, and these schools have been identified from around 14 districts from across the state.
And why are these schools being merged now?
So these schools are being merged under Niti Aayog's program, which was launched in 2017. And it is called SAT-E, which stands for Sustainable Action for Transformation of Human Capital in Education. And this program was started in MP, Jharkhand, and Odisha. And the Niti Aayog wanted to give assistance in health and education sectors. And under the education sector, one of the program which they wanted to do was consolidation and rationalization of schools. So in 2017, when they started this program, Odisha had carried out a merger process. And that merger process was with schools which had less than 5 students. And the number was around 1,000. So since the number wasn't very much significant, there were no protests or there were no objections to it. But now, in March earlier this year, Odisha had issued a notification stating that there will be a merger of around 11,000 schools. But of these, a recent notification has stated that the districts have to, expedite the process of merging 8,000 schools. Now, these 8,000 schools are primary schools. So far, because of the lockdown, the process couldn't happen after March. But now the state is thinking of reopening schools after December 31st. So they have started with this process again.
This isn't the first time such a merger of schools is being carried out in the state under the scheme called SATI. The SATHE, or Sustainable Action for Transforming Human Capital in Education project that Aishwarya mentioned, is being carried out in 3 states, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. According to the Niti Aayog, 16 states responded favorably to the proposal, following which 3 were shortlisted. The project offers states assistance with improving their health and education sectors. It is based on formal agreements with the states and is funded through a cost-sharing mechanism between the Niti Aayog and the participating states. An official release from the Niti Aayog says that SATI has been envisioned as a program that aims to transform elementary and secondary school education across these 3 states. Schemes suggested under this project will be implemented only if states agree to it. As Aishwarya said, in Odisha, the government had earlier merged schools that had 5 or less students. That faced no protest. So what are the main objections now?
So one of the main objections by parents as well as by activists, RTE activists and education activists is that since this consolidation process, which Niti Aayog is talking about, means to rationalize resources, to consolidate resources. If a school does not have teachers or if it does not have infrastructure, it has low enrollment, you merge it with another school which has better infrastructure, which has a good number of teachers. So the objection being raised is why not these schools, which you want to merge with others, be provided with those resources instead? The another objection is that RT activists specifically have said that this merger is in violation of Section 3 and 8 of the Right to Education Act, which specifically talks about free education for all and the state's responsibility to impart free education to all.
On paper, it seems fine. The government school that has only 20 students or less is merged with a bigger school. Why are parents objecting to children going to a bigger school?
The people's problem basically to this is there are a couple of things like since they have been talking about these 15 districts, Odisha has a lot of tribal districts, and in these tribal districts, inaccessibility is a major concern. There are a lot of hills and forest covers where people reside, and the parents have this issue that if the school is farther away from where it is right now, the students cannot travel all the way because in a lot of villages they have to probably cross a river. In monsoons, the river is flowing at its full capacity, and it won't be safe for children to cross a river and go to another village to study. Another problem is that a lot of people from Odisha migrate to other states to work. They migrate to Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra. There's a lot of migration which happens, and a lot of these parents prefer to keep their children back in their villages with their grandparents probably so that they can continue with their schools and education. But now if the parents are gone again to work, it won't be easy for the grandparents to take the child all the way to a school which is maybe more than 5 kilometers away. And one more concern is nutrition. Now, a lot of parents depend on midday meals as the only source of nutrition for their children. In Odisha, as per the latest figures by the Public Health Department, 35% of kids under age of 14 are malnourished, which is huge. So, the parents feel that if the school is farther away and if the child cannot go all the way to that school, there will be dropouts and it will be inevitable. And if there are dropouts, then they'll also not be able to avail the benefits under the midday meal scheme, which will be a problem for the children.
The government had suggested even providing children with a transport allowance that would seemingly facilitate their travel to school. Why is that not a feasible option?
The allowance which the government has said will be 20 rupees per day, and there will be an initial allowance of rupees 3,000. But the parents say that, the allowance is not an issue. Most of the children have to walk because the problem of inaccessibility is such that even an ambulance cannot reach these villages. So what mode of transport will they take anyway? What will they do with the rupees 20 anyway? So they'll have to walk these distances. And for these primary children, it will be very difficult to walk a distance of, say, 5 kilometers to reach another school. Even if it's 2 kilometers, it will be very difficult. When it's in their hamlet, when the school is in their neighborhood, it's easier because the children can come together and go to the school, and the parents also feel safe that the child is nearby. But for a child to walk back home, probably in the evening, because we also have classes going till 5 in the evening, it is not safe, is what the parents feel.
The pandemic has already played havoc with this school year. Children across states were deprived of midday meals on account of shutdowns and the closure of schools. We asked Aishwarya, what's the situation with schools in Odisha?
Schools are not functional right now. They're not operational. They were planning to reopen schools on 16th of November, from 16th of November. But there's a second wave of COVID, which is expected in the state from December 15th, between December 15th and January 15th to be precise. So they have dropped the plan of reopening schools, and now schools will be reopening only after December 31st. In terms of the online classes which were going on, recently they have started radio classes on All India Radio. Initially, they were doing classes through WhatsApp and TV, but the penetration was very low. As per the records that we have, it was only around 32.2% of the whole lot that could avail education through TV and WhatsApp groups. So now recently they have launched this education program through radio, and they're trying to reach out to more students.
Aishwarya also pointed out that these government schools are also in areas where children don't have other options, like say going to a private school. These are remote areas that, as Aishwarya says, even an ambulance can't get to. So if children stop going to a school, there's a good chance they're dropping out. The Sathi project was to conclude by the end of 2020, but the lockdown to slow the spread of COVID-19 has prevented it from being executed this year. As Aishwarya says, online schooling is estimated to have reached just around 32% students, but the project has a deadline.
So they have to finish the consolidation program by the end of this academic year 2020, which is why there's this huge number which is piled up, and they wish to finish it by the next year, before the next academic year starts.
If it's in a hamlet and people have access to ready education, wouldn't say that have higher priority than moving it, consolidating for the sake of consolidating and then potentially
That's
losing
what the
children?
Is. Exactly. That's what the contention is of the parents and as well as of the activists, that, instead of merging these schools, why not bring in more teachers? So why not develop the infrastructure of that school wherever there are less number of students? But instead of that, they're planning to consolidate to rationalize the resources. So
what has the government said in response to these protests? Because as in, why won't they say increase resources, or why is that so unfeasible?
Yeah, so their main response to these protests have been that if there are areas where children have to cross, say, a national highway, and that's a concern by the parents, or if children have to cross a river, and if there are geographical constraints, basically, nothing else, but if there are geographical constraints and the children cannot travel to the schools, they will consider these concerns and they will not go ahead with the merger. But so far, there have been around 4 to 5 protests in different districts, but there have been no order from the government saying that, we won't be merging these schools.
US drug maker Pfizer has released preliminary data from late-stage human trials of the COVID-19 vaccine it has developed with German biotech firm BioNTech, which indicated the candidate is able to demonstrate an effectiveness against COVID-19. According to the pharmaceutical firm's findings, the vaccine was more than 90% effective in preventing COVID-19 among vaccinated participants who had never contracted the infection before and had received the second dose. This was in comparison with participants who had only received a placebo. However, the interim results released were of only 94 out of nearly 40,000 volunteers that were injected with the vaccine candidate. The CEO of Pfizer also said that more data on safety was needed and they were continuing to collect it. Pfizer and BioNTech estimate that it will take until the third week of November for the company to make 2 months' worth of safety data available. If that data indicates that it is safe, the vaccine candidate can be sent to the US drug regulator for emergency approval. However, as it stands, India will not get access to this vaccine immediately, even if the US regulator clears its use. Its launch will depend on whether the vaccine candidate's developers approach the Indian drug regulator, either on their own or with an Indian partner, to conduct human trials of the vaccine candidate here. 5 other vaccine candidates are already at various stages of trials in India presently. You were listening to The 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Arun George, and as always, was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explained page. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.